Hello, everyone. Welcome to English Insights. Today, we will explore one of the darkest and most mysterious stories in history: the brutal death of Joseph Stalin, the powerful leader of the Soviet Union. In March 1953, Stalin suddenly became very sick and died a few days later. The official story says he died from a stroke, but many people believe there was something more, maybe poison or even betrayal from his closest men. This story is not only about history and politics, it is also a chance to improve your English listening skills while learning about one of the most secret deaths of the 20th century. Now, let's get started. Part 1. Stalin's Rise to Power. Joseph Stalin was born in 1878 in a small town in Georgia, which was part of the Russian Empire. His real name was Joseph Jugashvili. Later, he chose the name Stalin, which means man of steel, in Russian. From a young age, Stalin's life was hard. His father was a shoemaker who drank too much, and his mother worked very hard to raise him alone. She wanted him to become a priest, so she sent him to a church school. But Stalin soon lost interest in religion and became more interested in politics. In his teenage years, Stalin started reading books about revolution and freedom. He joined a secret group that wanted to change Russia and end the rule of the Tsar. When he was about 20, he became a member of the Bolshevik Party, led by Vladimir Lenin. The Bolsheviks wanted to give power to workers and poor people. Stalin worked hard for the party, writing articles, organizing strikes, and helping spread revolutionary ideas. However, life as a young revolutionary was dangerous. Stalin was arrested several times by the police and sent to Siberia, a very cold and lonely place. Each time he escaped and came back to continue his work. This made him stronger and more determined. Lenin and other leaders began to see Stalin as a loyal and tough man who would do anything for the revolution. In 1917, the Russian Revolution changed everything. The Tsar was forced to give up power, and the Bolsheviks took control of the country. After the revolution, Stalin became an important member of the new government. He was given the job of managing the party's organization, which gave him power over many other officials. When Lenin became sick in the early 1920s, Stalin used his position to build more control. He made friends with some leaders and pushed away those who opposed him. After Lenin's death in 1924, a great power struggle began inside the Communist Party. Stalin was not the most famous or intelligent man, but he was very patient and careful. Step by step, he removed his rivals, including Leon Trotsky, one of Lenin's closest friends. By the late 1920s, Stalin had full control of the Soviet Union. He became the new leader and his word was law. His rise to power was not fast or easy, but it showed his strong will and his talent for politics. Stalin's story had just begun, and the world would soon see how powerful and dangerous he could become. Part 2. The Iron Ruler. When Stalin became the leader of the Soviet Union, he wanted full control of everything: the government, the army, and the people. He believed that only one strong leader could keep the country safe and united. To many people, Stalin looked like a father of the nation, but behind that image, he ruled with fear. In the early 1930s, Stalin started big changes called the 5-year plans. These plans were made to grow factories and farms very fast. Millions of people worked in terrible conditions to meet production goals. At the same time, Stalin forced many farmers to join collective farms, where land and animals no longer belonged to families, but to the state. Many farmers did not agree with this idea, and some refused to give up their land. Stalin saw them as enemies, and millions of them were punished or sent away to work camps in Siberia. Stalin also feared anyone who might take his power. He didn't trust his friends, his officers, or even his closest advisors. In the late 1930s, he began what is now called the Great Purge. During this time, thousands of party members, army generals, and normal citizens were arrested. Many were forced to confess to crimes they never did, and were later executed or sent to prison camps. People learned to stay silent because even one wrong word could mean death. Despite the fear, Stalin used propaganda to build an image of himself as a hero. Posters and newspapers showed him as a kind, wise, and strong leader. Schools taught children to love and respect Comrade Stalin. In public, people smiled and cheered for him, but in private, they whispered in fear. During World War II, Stalin became even more famous. When Germany attacked the Soviet Union in 1941, he called the people to fight for their country. Millions of soldiers and civilians died, but in the end, the Soviet Union defeated Nazi Germany. Stalin became a hero again, both inside and outside his country. However, after the war, his rule became even harder. He trusted almost no one and believed that enemies were everywhere. His health began to get worse, but he continued to work long hours, giving orders, and reading reports late into the night. His closest men, such as Lavrenti Beria and Nikita Khrushchev, began to fear him deeply. No one dared to question him. By the early 1950s, Stalin had complete control of the Soviet Union. He decided who lived, who died, and what people could think or say. The man, who once fought for freedom, had become one of the most powerful and most feared rulers in history. Part 3. The Night Before His Death. It was the evening of March 1st, 1953. Joseph Stalin was at his country house, about 20 kilometers from Moscow. The house was quiet, but that night would become one of the most mysterious nights in Soviet history. Stalin invited a few of his top men to dinner. They were Lavrenti Beria, his secret police chief, and a few other close officials. During dinner, the group drank wine and talked for hours. Witnesses later said Stalin seemed in a good mood. He laughed, made jokes, and even teased his guests. But at times, he also became serious, asking questions about loyalty and power. It was already after midnight when the guests finally left. Stalin told his guards he did not want to be disturbed and went to his bedroom. The next morning, something strange happened. Usually, Stalin would wake up early and start reading reports. But that morning, there was no sound from his room. His guards were afraid to check on him because no one was allowed to enter without being called. Hours passed. Finally, late in the evening, one of the guards decided to open the door. Inside, they found Stalin lying on the floor, near his bed. He was alive, but could not speak. His clothes were wet, and he had a strange look on his face. It seemed like he had tried to call for help, but could not move. The guards panicked. Instead of calling the doctors right away, they waited, afraid to act without orders. It took several more hours before the doctors were finally called. When they arrived, they said Stalin had suffered a stroke, bleeding in his brain. He was still breathing, but in very bad condition. They placed him on a couch and gave him medicine, but it was already too late. For the next few days, Stalin's house was full of silence and fear. Beria and other leaders came and went, whispering in corners. Some said Beria smiled when he saw Stalin lying helpless. Others said he told the guards, "Don't wake him, the boss is sleeping." No one knows exactly what happened during those hours, but one thing was clear. Stalin, the man who controlled millions, was now powerless. By the night of March 5th, Stalin stopped breathing. The official doctors said his heart failed. His closest men stood by his body, each one thinking not only about the leader's death, but also about what would happen next. Part 4. The Official Story. After Stalin's death, on March 5th, 1953, the Soviet government quickly made an official statement. They said that Joseph Stalin, the great leader and protector of the people, had died from a stroke. Newspapers printed pictures of him lying in bed with flowers around him. The radio played sad music, and announcers spoke with broken voices, calling his death a great loss for the working class. Across the country, millions of people cried. In schools factories, and streets, workers stopped what they were doing to listen to the news. Some people could not believe it. Others were so afraid that they pretended to cry, not sure how to feel. For many years, they had been told that Stalin was almost like a god, strong, wise, and always right. Now, the father of the nation was gone. A few days later, a huge funeral was held in Moscow. Stalin's body was placed in a glass coffin, and thousands of people came to see him one last time. The line was so long that some people were crushed to death in the crowd. Many carried flowers and pictures of Stalin, while others stood silently, unsure what the future would bring. The government's message was clear. Stalin had died naturally, and the people must stay loyal to his memory. Newspapers continued to print stories about his great achievements, how he built factories, led the army to victory in World War II, and made the Soviet Union strong. No one was allowed to ask questions. Anyone who doubted the official story could be punished. Inside the government, however, the situation was different. The men who had been closest to Stalin, Beria, Khrushchev, and others, were already thinking about who would take his place. They smiled in public, but behind closed doors, they competed for power. Some of them knew secrets about Stalin's last days, but they kept silent. For many years, the Soviet people only knew this version of the story. Stalin died peacefully after a long and hard life of service, but outside the country, whispers began to spread. Foreign journalists and historians asked if it was only a stroke. Why did it take so long for doctors to arrive? Why did his guards wait so many hours? Why did some officials seem almost happy after his death? The answers were hidden, and so the mystery only grew deeper. Part 5. The Secret Theories. After Stalin's death, many people began to ask questions. The official story said he died from a stroke, but some details did not make sense. Why did the guards wait almost a whole day before calling the doctors? Why did Beria, the head of Stalin's secret police, look calm, even happy, when he saw the dying leader? These questions started many secret theories about what really happened on that night. The first theory is the poison theory. Some historians believe that Stalin was poisoned by the people closest to him. At that time, Stalin had become very suspicious. He did not trust anyone, not even his own doctors. He thought they might be spies. Because of that, he had several doctors arrested just months before he died. When Stalin became sick, there were almost no doctors left to help him. Some people believe that Beria and other officials used this chance to poison him and then let him die slowly. There are some small clues that support this idea. Witnesses said Stalin's face turned dark red and that he was sweating heavily before he collapsed. signs that could match some kinds of poison. Others said that a special tea or wine might have been mixed with something dangerous during the dinner on March 1st. But no one could ever prove it, because all the medical documents and reports were kept secret by the Soviet government. The second theory is the betrayal theory. According to this idea, Stalin was not poisoned. He really had a stroke, but his men simply let him die. When the guards found him on the floor, they waited for hours, afraid to act, without orders. Beria, who arrived first, told them not to call the doctors. Some witnesses said Beria even laughed and said, "He will die, and we will finally be free." For many officials, Stalin's death meant the end of their fear. A third theory says that Stalin's health was already very bad, but his own lifestyle killed him. He smoked a lot, drank too much, and worked day and night. Stress, anger, and years of pressure could have caused his heart and brain to fail. Some historians think this is the simplest explanation, that Stalin's body could no longer take the weight of power. Even today, nobody knows the full truth. After Stalin's death, the Soviet government never allowed an open investigation. Many documents were destroyed, and witnesses were too scared to speak. When the Soviet Union finally collapsed, in 1991, some secret files were opened, but they gave no clear answers. Still, the mystery continues to attract people around the world. Was Stalin murdered by his closest men? Did he die naturally after a life of violence and fear? Or was it a mix of both, nature and betrayal working together? Whatever the truth is, one thing remains certain: even in death, Stalin kept his greatest secret. Part 6. What we can learn from his death. The death of Joseph Stalin was not only the end of one man's life, it was the end of a long and painful time in Soviet history. For almost 30 years, Stalin ruled with fear. Millions of people were sent to prison camps, and many were executed. When he died in 1953, the country was full of sadness, but also full of quiet relief. People did not know what would happen next, but they hoped life might become a little better. After Stalin's death, his closest men started to fight for power. Beria, Khrushchev, and others wanted to control the future of the Soviet Union. In the beginning, Beria seemed the strongest, but soon he was arrested and executed. Khrushchev finally became the new leader, and under his rule, the country slowly changed. He began to speak openly about Stalin's crimes and called this time the period of terror. For many Soviet citizens, it was shocking to learn how much fear had controlled their lives. The world also learned an important lesson from Stalin's story. It showed how dangerous it is when one person has too much power. When there are no limits, no free speech, and no truth, Even a leader can become a dictator. Stalin's death was a warning about what happens when people are too afraid to question authority. It reminded the world that freedom and justice must be protected, not just won once and forgotten. In some ways, Stalin's mystery also teaches something personal. Power, fame, and fear cannot protect anyone from death. In his last moments, the man who once ruled millions was alone on the floor, unable to call for help. His guards were too afraid to save him. It is a sad image, but also a powerful one. Today, historians still discuss Stalin's death, and new books continue to appear. Some people in Russia still see him as a hero who made the country strong. Others remember the pain and loss he caused. But whether loved or hated, Stalin's story reminds us that truth is never simple, and power always comes with a price.